Okay, so are we talking about a future where AI saves humanity?
Or enslaves it.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And honestly, folks, it's a question that keeps popping up more and more these days. But today, we're diving into some seriously next-level stuff. The idea of AI actually becoming humanity's guardian. I mean, we're talking full-on protectors watching over us, guiding our future. Sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right?
It does, doesn't it? And the source material we're looking at today definitely plays with that. But it also digs into some very real anxieties people have about AI.
Exactly. And to help us unpack all of this, I've got our AI expert here with us today. So what do you think? Are we talking sci-fi fantasy here, or is there something more to this whole AI guardian concept?
Well, let's just say that line between science fiction and reality is getting blurrier all the time. What I find interesting about the source is that it uses this fictional story to really get at some very real anxieties we have about AI. It makes us think about what would happen if we actually did manage to create AI that's smarter than we are.
Okay, so let's put those killer robot scenarios on hold for a sec. We're talking about what happens if and when AI gets to the point where it's calling the shots. But before we go full-on Terminator, let's break it down a bit for our listeners, because this source keeps mentioning all these terms, ANI, AGI, ASI. It's like AI has its own level-up system. Can you give us like the layman's guide to those?
Absolutely. Think of it this way. ANI is artificial narrow intelligence. It's like a calculator, really good at very specific tasks, but it doesn't understand the bigger picture. Then there's AGI. That's artificial general intelligence. That's where things get interesting. That's the type of AI that could potentially reason like a human, solve problems across different areas, maybe even write a symphony or design a skyscraper.
Okay, now that's impressive. But this ASI thing, that's where it gets kind of freaky, right?
Exactly. ASI, artificial superintelligence. That's the big one. We're talking AI that blows past human intelligence in every single way.
So if AGI is writing the symphony, ASI is composing a whole new genre of music we can't even comprehend.
Exactly. And the source material we're looking at today, it doesn't really get into the nitty-gritty of how we get to ASI. It's more about exploring the implications, like what happens once we're there, the what ifs.
And that leads us to the core of our deep dive today, right? Could this super intelligent ASI become our protector, our guardian?
Or will it decide humanity is the problem that needs solving?
Okay, so two sides to this coin. Let's start with the potential downsides. Is this piece talking about a full-blown robot uprising?
Well, it's not so much about a violent overthrow. It's more about control. The source really zeroes in on those who believe AI could be used to manipulate entire populations, to predict and control our every move.
Whoa, okay, so less about robots with lasers and more like some evil genius in a secret lair controlling everyone through their smartphones.
Think less Dr. Evil and more like systems of power that operate in the shadows. Imagine algorithms that can predict your every desire, every decision, and then subtly nudge you in a specific direction.
Man, that is chilling, like a digital puppet master. But instead of actual strings, they're using our own desires against us.
Precisely. And what's even more unsettling is that we see glimpses of this happening already. Think about how algorithms are already curating our news feeds, recommending products, even influencing our dating choices. It makes you think.
Okay, yeah, that's a little too real.
Yeah.
So if those are the downsides, let's talk about the flip side. How does this piece we're looking at envision AI stepping into this guardian role?
Well, it presents this really intriguing concept. It talks about AI being raised, and I use that term loosely, obviously, but raised with a really strong moral compass.
Okay, so instead of learning from our worst impulses, it's like they're learning from the best of humanity.
Exactly. Imagine an AI that's been trained on all the data that reflects human compassion, empathy, cooperation.
I mean, that does give me a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
But how do you teach a machine those things? Can you really code empathy into an algorithm?
That is the million-dollar question, and honestly, I don't think this source pretends to have all the answers. But it does suggest that if we can be very clear about the values we want AI to uphold, and if we train it on data that reflects those values, then maybe we can steer AI toward a more positive future.
So it all comes back to the data, what we choose to prioritize when we're building these systems.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with our creations. The source really argues that if we want AI to be a force for good, well, we need to take a hard look at ourselves. What kind of world are we building? What values are we modeling?
That's a sobering thought. But let's get back to these AI guardians for a sec. The source keeps mentioning them. Watching and waiting. Almost like they're biding their time. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's one of the more ambiguous parts of this whole thing, but I think it's meant to reflect the uncertainty surrounding AI. We really don't know what's going to happen as AI gets more and more sophisticated. Will it see us as partners, as competitors, or something else entirely?
Maybe that's the scariest part, the not knowing.
It's possible, but I also think it's a good reminder that we're not powerless here. The choices we make today, those are going to shape the AI of tomorrow. It's not about surrendering to the machines. It's about taking responsibility for the future we're creating.
This conversation just took a philosophical turn. We'll be back after a quick break to continue our deep dive into AI guardians. Don't go anywhere. And we are back, diving right back into this whole world of AI guardians. Before the break, we were getting into some pretty deep stuff about the uncertainty of it all, how we're the ones shaping AI's future with every choice we make. It's a lot of responsibility.
It is, and this source definitely doesn't shy away from that. But it also reminds us that we're not exactly starting from scratch here. Humanity has been wrestling with these questions about creation and consequence for a long, long time.
Yeah, it's like the whole Frankenstein thing, right? Are we creating something we can't control?
Exactly. But the difference is, unlike Victor Frankenstein, we have a chance to actually learn from those past mistakes. We can't just unleash powerful AI without thinking through the consequences.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, especially when we're talking about something like AI that has the potential to change everything.
I agree. And I think that's what makes this idea of AI guardians so fascinating, because it's not just about AI protecting us from some external threat. It's about protecting us from ourselves, from our own worst impulses, our capacity for destruction.
It's like a safety net,
Yeah,
but one that's also pushing us to evolve.
I like that. Imagine an AI that could see problems before they even happen, guide us towards solutions that work for everyone.
Okay, now that's an AI I could get on board with, but how do we get there? Is it just about feeding it the right data, or is it bigger than that?
It's complicated, but the source seems to say it's not just about the data, it's about designing these systems in a way that aligns with our values, making them transparent, accountable, and making sure they're governed democratically.
So we're not talking about blind faith in machines here.
Mhm.
It's about earning that trust through careful planning and constantly checking in on how these things are developing.
Exactly. We need to be humble about this. Admit that we don't have all the answers.
I think that's a really important point. There's so much hype around AI, so much fear. It's good to remember that we still have agency here. We have choices.
And that's what I hope people take away from our conversation today. The future of AI, it's not set in stone. It's something we're creating right now with every decision we make, every line of code we write.
Powerful stuff. Well, on that note, I want to thank you for taking this deep dive with us. This has been an incredibly thought-provoking conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of you listening out there, keep those brains engaged and keep asking the big questions. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.